exemplified by the title, The Lost Epoch: Unexplained Gaps in Human History. History for Sleep utilize a calming, reflective tone to present radical, anti-establishment historical theories. The resulting juxtaposition, the presentation of disruptive pseudoscience within a meditative, non-confrontational setting, requires rigorous deconstruction to understand both its archaeological claims and its rhetorical impact. A. Conceptualizing the Epoch of Absence, the narrative definition. The core argument of the Lost Epoch narrative is that established human chronology, which posits a gradual, linear progression from hunter-gatherer societies to complex civilizations, is fundamentally incomplete. This epoch of absence functions as a convenient, unifying explanation for perceived chronological and technological inconsistencies across the globe. Proponents suggest that human history was reset following a global cataclysm, forcing civilization to restart from a primitive baseline. A central tenet of this argument focuses on the rapid, seemingly unearned complexity observed in the earliest known historical sites. For instance, the Sumerian cities of Eridu, Ur, and Nippur are often described within these narratives as emerging fully formed with religious temples, administrative systems, and astronomical observatories. This perceived instantaneous complexity is interpreted not as the culmination of thousands of years of preceding pre-literate development, but as evidence of an external or inherited blueprint of civilization. By arguing that the foundational elements of civilization arrived overnight, the narrative implies that the knowledge must have been preserved and passed down from a superior, technologically capable, yet lost, antecedent culture. This interpretation systematically minimizes the crucial periods of adaptive, formative growth that characterized the Neolithic transition. B. The media conduit, the relaxation paradox of History for Sleep. The rhetorical power of the Lost Epoch is significantly amplified by its distribution format, the ASMR-driven or sleep story genre. These videos are designed for passive absorption, characterized by extremely long run times, often exceeding 2 hours, and in some cases stretching to nearly 9 hours, 2:28:17, 4:51:08, or even 8:49:55. This duration facilitates deep immersion, aided by sensory elements such as soothing sounds of rain and calm narration. The format creates a distinct relaxation paradox. The explicit goal is passive listening and relaxation, History for Sleep, sleepy time history. The audience is encouraged to close their eyes and let their mind drift. Yet the content presented is highly disruptive and sensational, proposing conspiracy, chronological manipulation, and sudden global cataclysms. This strategy is fundamentally an act of rhetorical framing, presenting controversial, anti-establishment theories in a meditative non-confrontational setting allows the content to bypass the audience's typical critical faculties. Unsupported or speculative claims are absorbed as calming truth, lending a sense of privileged, quiet knowledge to the listener. The producers of such content sometimes attempt to preemptively establish authenticity, asserting they check the facts to ensure the final story is both true and meaningful. This tension between academic rigor, the factual basis, and narrative comfort, the meaningful story, represents the central ethical conflict within this genre. The narrative often validates itself through affective authority, the sense of peace and understanding it provides, rather than epistemic authority, the validated, peer-reviewed evidence. This structural choice suggests that the ultimate agenda is not to promote scientific discourse, but to foster a pervasive sense of chronological nihilism, where the entire recorded history from prehistory to the Dark Ages, as referenced by the inclusion of the phantom time hypothesis, is suspect and manipulated. By achieving this level of doubt, the narrative justifies its own radical claims as the necessary corrective. C. The historical genealogy of hyperdiffusionism. The concept of a lost epoch is not novel. It is a modern articulation of 19th century hyperdiffusion theories, most famously associated with the myth of Atlantis. These theories propose that all significant cultural advancements originated from a single, superior source culture that was subsequently destroyed. Contemporary academic critiques identify these narratives as belonging to the cultic milieu of conspiracy theory, as articulated by archaeologist John Hoops. In this milieu, audiences find comfort in the notion that established experts and scientists are hiding the real truth. This perception provides a compelling social identity for the audience, one that possesses hidden knowledge that the mainstream rejects. The narrative, therefore, serves a function beyond mere historical revision. It validates a particular worldview that is inherently skeptical of institutional authority. The very structure of the claim, that a preceding generation, the patriarch wits, possessed greater longevity and by extension greater knowledge, echoes historical anxieties about lost epochs of intellectual purity, a lament seen as far back as literary criticisms of the Enlightenment period. This psychological need for a perfect lost foundation of knowledge explains the enduring appeal of the lost epoch, the Sun, the geochronological battlefield, the Younger Dryas cataclysm. To explain the disappearance of an advanced global civilization, the lost epoch narrative relies heavily on invoking an instantaneous, devastating planetary event. The primary plot device employed for this catastrophe is the Younger Dryas, YD reversal, transformed by fringe proponents into the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, YDIH. A. The Younger Dryas, YD event, established climatology. The Younger Dryas, c. 12,900, 11,700 years ago, is a well-documented, globally significant though internally complex period of climate change. The scientific consensus holds that the YD represented a sudden and dramatic return to near-glacial conditions after an initial period of rapid warming, the Bulling-Allerud interstadial. This reversal, particularly acute in the northern hemisphere, is generally attributed to shifts in oceanic circulation, specifically the massive influx of freshwater from the rapidly melting Laurentide ice sheet disrupting the Atlantic meridional overturning circulation, AMOC. Crucially, established climatology frames the YD as a severe environmental stressor, impacting megafauna survival and significantly challenging the burgeoning development of early agriculture, e.g. the Natufian culture in the Levant. However, human cultures adapted, reorganized, and eventually transitioned into the Neolithic era, demonstrating resilience rather than systemic erasure. B. The Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, YDIH, and the narrative plot device. The lost epoch narrative requires a monocausal, instantaneous explanation for cultural collapse, rather than a complex, decadal climate shift. It asserts that the YD was initiated by a cosmic event, likely a comet, around 12,800 years ago. This purported impact serves as the mechanism that violently shattered the advanced pre-existing civilization, triggering global floods and instantaneously resetting humanity. The YDIH is built upon contested proxy markers allegedly found in sediment layers dating to the start of the YD, nanodiamonds, magnetic spherules, and elevated levels of platinum group elements, PGE. However, the majority of the geological and archaeological communities reject the YDIH as the primary or sole cause of the YD onset. The counter-evidence is substantial, indicating that these proxy markers often result from terrestrial contamination, non-impact mechanisms, such as massive wildfires contributing to carbonaceous materials, inconsistent global distribution, and even localized non-global deposition. If the YD onset was caused by a single catastrophic global impact, the proxies should be uniformly distributed and unambiguously linked to extraterrestrial material, which current research does not support. The insistence on a sudden, cosmic catastrophe simplifies the historical process. A slow, complex climate shift implies early human failure to adapt. A sudden impact makes them heroic victims of an unavoidable global trauma. The catastrophic narrative is inherently more compelling and dramatically satisfying, yet scientifically unsustainable. C. The Silurian hypothesis, a model for evidence deterioration, a useful framework for analyzing the detectability of a lost epoch, is the rigorous thought experiment known as the Silurian hypothesis, proposed by astrophysicist Adam Frank and climate scientist Gavin Schmidt. This hypothesis assesses modern science's ability to detect evidence of an advanced industrial civilization existing millions of years ago, long before the rise of Homo sapiens. The crucial distinction lies in the nature of the evidence. The Silurian hypothesis concludes that finding direct technological artifacts, like tools or buildings, is unlikely due to the rarity of fossilization and the pervasive effects of tectonic activity and erosion over vast timescales. Instead, the search for pre-human industrial activity must focus on durable, geochemical signals embedded in the geological record, indirect evidence. These signals would include carbon anomalies, evidence of widespread